Hello, jewelry lover. My name is Bella Naiman, and I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Welcome to this virtual program, part of NYCJW 24. The theme for the seventh annual edition is Wander and Wander, and it reflects the multifaceted nature of jewelry as both art and personal expression. Wander captures the awe inspiring craftsmanship behind each piece, the dazzling, delicate, or bold details that turn your head in admiration. Wander invites you to explore the wonderful and wild creative journeys behind the jewelry. It's not just about the finished piece, it's about the adventure it took to get there. Designers experiment, push boundaries, and play with ideas and materials. And this year, New York City Jewelry Week takes participants to see it all unfold. Every necklace, ring, and bracelet is a passport to a new world where innovation reigns and imagination knows no limit. So we hope that these programs will take you on that journey and are your passport as well. Sit back, enjoy, and while these are not live, we welcome your comments. So please don't hesitate to drop us a line, whether it's email or Instagram, or even get in touch with some of the incredible curators, artists, writers that have really worked very hard to bring you this program. So thanks very much. And we also hope to see you out in New York. Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us here for this special New York City Jewelry Week presentation. We're talking the green scene, as it says on your screens, which is undoubtedly a color of the moment. And we're going to talk about how some of those gemstones, especially peridot and Paraiba tourmalines, kind of make their journey from mine to market. I'm Tanya Dukes. I'm a journalist who's been writing about jewelry for a long time. We won't talk about exactly how long. But I'm here with a panel of all-star experts, and they'll give you their insights into the process of getting some of those incredible green gemstones out into the world, out of the earth, and to the people who love to wear them. I'm joined today by Pietana, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Fuli Gemstones, which is a vertically integrated peridot mining company that's known for its dedication to sustainable and responsible sourcing of peridot. Her leadership has been instrumental in positioning Fuli as a leader in responsibly colored stones, and she really focuses beyond traditional marketing on environmental stewardship and community empowerment. We are also here with Stephen Hennigan, who is the business director of Cuprian & Co., which is a pioneering Paraiba gemstone mining company that emphasizes ethical practices, transparency, and sustainability. And it's known for its commitment to fair trade practices and traceable sourcing and fair wages and safe working conditions for its team. And on the design side, we're here with the inimitable Stephen Webster. You know him, you love him. He is a celebrated British jewelry designer. He's got a really bold, edgy aesthetic that I'm sure you recognize. He's really defined modern luxury jewelry and has kind of glamorous rock and roll inspired sensibility, also a sense of humor, which is something we could all use right now. And also Lorraine West is here with us. She's a visionary young jewelry designer. She's really celebrated for that kind of fun combination of minimalism, hip hop, cool. You've seen her work on Zendaya and Alicia Keys and all the girlies that you love. And she's got a real emphasis on clean lines and organic forms that are modern and timeless. And so I'm going to shut up now because I know you really want to hear from them. And this is for all of you panelists, this is meant to be a conversation. So please jump in if you have something to say or you have questions for each other. And so I just want to kind of set the stage when it comes to the color green specifically. Right now, I'm in the market a lot. I see so much of what designers make, and I'm wondering, green really does seem to be the color. So when do you think this mania for it started, and have you ever noticed it to be so popular before?
Do you want me to jump in?
Sure. Or Stephen and Lorraine, since you're using these, you see the clients really directly. What do you think?
You go first, Lorraine.
Okay.
I'm passing the buck.
Hi, everyone. So, well, personally, green is my favorite color. It's been my favorite color for the majority of my life. And also green is the least distracting color in the rainbow. So it's one of those colors that is ease. It represents beauty, like in Kemetic Egyptian. Green represents sacred beauty. So perhaps when people see it, they feel connected to that and they're looking for that sense of peace within. And it's also a color that looks good with other colors. It looks great with pink. It looks great with red. It looks great with black, with white. It's also representing of green leaves. And, usually you see green leaves that are next to a flower, rose, peonies, different colors. So it's, again, it in nature, it's meant to partner with other colors. So maybe that could be a part of the appeal without people even knowing that,
Really cool. And Stephen, yeah.
Yes. Well, you know what? Two designers, two with a favourite colour green. We're not just saying that.
I believe it.
If you believe me, yeah. So that helps for sure, because you can't avoid putting a little bit of personal taste into things that you create. You can't help it. It just works that way. But I think the idea that it's soothing is right up there, I suppose, on why it's popular as a colour with in a jewel tone. But I think for me, the first classic, and when I say that, I mean like diamond, emerald, ruby, sapphire, gemstone that I came across that I really was sort of intrigued by was a green tourmaline. And when we're talking back now in probably like 1980, and I think, I'd sort of done my basics in London, and you didn't really see that kind of gem around much. It wasn't until I sort of journeyed over to North America that I was sort of even exposed to these types of gems, the ones that I call them the more exotics. That doesn't mean anything. It just means that they weren't the normal colour palette that you saw in a jeweller's window in London at that time. And I think I sort of just wanted to work with it. It felt like, wow, if this is a gem, it's a gem for me, if you like. And of course, that led into other sort of versions of a tourmaline and colour that way, and other gems that were new at the time, relatively speaking, like tanzanite, etc., going out that way. But it was a green tourmaline, and I still love green tourmalines. I find them a very easy stone to sell, and so leaning into what does green mean from a design point of view, I find it very easy to work with. I think, like Lorraine said, it seems to work. It works with yellow gold. It works with white gold. It's tonally something that people, I think, understand in a jewelry context. That's it. And then from then in, I suppose it's down to sort of shades of green, really, and what you find exciting as a designer to want to present in your work to take to an audience.
Yeah, I always wondered, this was Brat summer, as you all know, leading into Brat fall. So I don't know if that makes a difference in your life or in what your customers come looking for, but
I would say it was perfect timing. Perfect timing, actually, for both projects, because the peridot is that perfect red, right?
Yeah.
And then the Paraíba, when you get more close to the greens, it gives you that same energy. So for marketing purposes, it was really spectacular. And then also it gained more attention for the folks with their zodiac signs being, that peridot stone. So I don't know. Green is just spectacular. It's just so easy, just like Stephen said, so easy to work with and so pleasing, with accompanying stones of various colors or diamonds or without. It gives you that confidence level to really explore your designs, particularly if you're setting in a ring,
Yeah. And it should be said that you both have collaborated with Fuli and Cuprian and kind of designer collaborations, kind of creating amazing pieces with their stones that they've mined. So I want to dig in a little bit into those gems in particular and find out kind of what makes some of those materials unique. So, you know, Pia, maybe let's start with you in peridot. I mean, I think some people, as Lauren was saying, are familiar with it just from like the birthstone context. So, you know, but can you tell us, you know, a little bit more about what even what peridots look like and what are the stones that come from Fuli like?
Sure. So peridot is an ancient gemstone. It's been around for centuries, even millennia. And it's a gemstone that kind of comes and goes because nobody had really been behind it to love it and nurture it since the Egyptians, and then a little bit going into the Edwardians, and then it fell off the planet. And it's a beautiful, it's the only gemstone that only comes in one color, by the way. So it only comes in green. It's natural. It doesn't need any treatments. We literally mine it, we cut it, we grade it, we cut it, we polish it, and then we work with designers, which is a modern way of working. And it's the particular peridot from our mine. Peridot can be affected by the amount of iron that's contained inside the gemstone. So ours has a very slightly lower iron content, which makes it this zingy green, and that's kind of how I managed to get Stephen over the line when he saw the green. He couldn't believe this vivid green from our peridot. And I'm like, and you know, you're picking up the phone and you're speaking to great designers like Stephen. You're saying, "Oh, peridot," like, you know, peridot, and he said, "Well, let me have a look. And he went, "Wow." You know, and then we went on to do some great pieces together, including this amazing, magnificent collar necklace. Hey, Stephen, and back me up here. I mean, it was.
Can I just? I'm gonna be rude and interrupt, but it's on your side. I want to add, because it's quite important here, that I was a little bit okay, peridot. It's my birthstone, my favourite colour, birthstone. But I've not worked with it a lot because I think that kind of, let's call it the more classic olivey green, I've not found a lot of, enthusiasm for. So I didn't work with it, that's it. And then when I saw, what was coming from Fuli, and I was with my daughter's 33, and she just said, my God, she said, "Dad, what is that?" I said, "It was a peridot." And she said, "It's so modern." Yeah. And I think that probably says a lot. You know what I mean? It suddenly went from something that perhaps was tonally belonged with the Edwardians, and then you've got this thing that literally feels super modern. And that's all you need, is that really. Sorry.
And I think that's what has helped us help young designers and cool designers gravitate towards us, because they're seeing it as a fresh new gemstone. Even though it's got this ancient history, it's gone into the psyche and gone in a new place. And I think everything plays into that. The black green, I think the color, the fact that green is associated with nature, with the leaves, the trees, everything, it makes you feel good. And I think designers adopting it in that way is also a psyche thing, I think. And we love it. We love the fact that we have all these amazing creations coming from the peridot, and it's firmly putting it back on the map, and it's given it a platform by working with great designers like Stephen and like Lorraine. So we thank you very much for supporting us in our sort of challenge. So to get it back on the map, and I think you've done a marvelous job with it. So.
Yeah. Now that's such an interesting concept, the idea that certain colors feel more modern than others, which is something that I, haven't really heard broached or thought about in a way. Can you elaborate on what makes something feel modern versus not in the color world?
Do you want me to start with that? I mean, I think in this particular case, it's got,
in this case,
there's elements in there that start to be, almost like a neon. It's got this vibrancy that definitely you wouldn't associate with, I'll call a more classic tone of peridot. And that you know, it's that. I mean, we're looking at these stones on the screen. I mean, that says it all. You know,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel like something that's, you know, from somewhere back. You know, it just feels like, wow, I'm not familiar with it. If I was and I've seen this, I'm sure Lorraine has seen it. You put it in front of a consumer or a potential consumer, and they're like, wow, what is that? You know, you can't ignore it. It doesn't want to be ignored. It wants all the attention. I'm sure that's partly the brat in it, but you know, it won't leave you alone. It's not gonna sort of go into the shadows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Totally.
you know, I think that's probably enough from me, but that's what makes it modern. It feels and looks like a contemporary gem. Yeah.
Right. And I also think that the designer collaborations are really cool because you're selecting, you know, designer, fine, and high jewelers, where our mission is to infuse our point of view in every piece that we make. You know, we're not just doing just anything. You know, everything has a story. It's connected to something within our personal history, our spirit, our aesthetic, and then also we might be inspired by the source, you know, something from the location where the gemstones are mined. So we have so much information to come up with something wonderful that will highlight the stone, because that's what it's about. You know, it's not just you see the gemstone, how beautiful it looks on its own, but it's just an object. It comes alive when it's set, you know, for a pair of earrings or a necklace or a ring or bracelet. That's when it comes alive, and that's when, you know, the wearer gets to, you know, feel this energy of the piece and enjoy the beauty of it as well.
Yeah. Now, Stephen, I wanted you to jump in here because obviously, Paraiba tourmalines are, I think, fall into that very modern rubric as well. But you know, for people who might not be quite as familiar, because you know, it's maybe a slightly less well-known stone outside the kind of inner circle of jewelry knowledgeable consumers. Can you just tell us a little bit, like, even what does it look like, and can you share the story about how it was discovered and what makes it special and unique?
Sure. So I'm going to go by Steve. That way I don't answer Stephen Webster's question.
Oh, right. Sorry.
But yes, you're right. So Paraiba tourmaline is definitely a more niche type of stone. Again, tourmaline, which is maybe different from peridot, can come in all spectrum of colors. Tourmaline as a stone, but Paraiba specifically has to be either blue or green. And so our mine in Mozambique produces both the spectrum of blue and green. And this locality, Mozambique, was actually the second place discovery. Originally, it was 1989 that the original discovery was made in Brazil, in the state of Paraiba, which gave it its name. Immediately, the stone, the colors captivated the market. The prices really saw a drastic increase. And then it was circa 2005, 2006, where the second deposit was discovered over in Mozambique. And, you know, the colors and the vibrancy and this neon glow that these stones have is unlike anything else, in the market. And so, what really gives that color is this trace element of copper. That is the key ingredient behind the color. Essentially, you've got tourmaline, which grows in a very different environment in which copper is typically found. And by some miracle, at the time of formation, copper was infused with the tourmaline. So you've got these trace elements of copper that basically will affect the way certain wavelengths of color, certain wavelengths like red and yellow, will be absorbed. And what's transmitted is the blue and the greens. And that's what really gives it its glow and its kind of signature look, where immediately you just know that you're looking at something really special. And this occurrence of copper with the tourmaline really only occurs in 3 localities in the world. You have Mozambique, you have Brazil, and to a much lesser degree, you have Nigeria. And because it's only has these 3 localities, there's a finite supply and definitely a scarcity and a rarity to this stone that really adds to the value and desirability.
Mhm. And are there differences between those 3 places in terms of what the material looks like that comes from them?
Absolutely. So again, the stone was first found in Brazil, state of Paraíba. That's how it got its name. When it was later discovered in Mozambique, there's definitely some different characteristics about the stone. But when the labs got together, what they determined was that for naming purposes, what's really important is actually that it's a copper-bearing tourmaline that's blue or green, independent of locality. So the labs will now use Paraíba or Paraíba type on all the certifications. But when you're looking at the stones, the major differences that you'll see is that typically the Paraíba from Brazil will have a higher copper content, and the color will tend to be a little bit more saturated, right? The downside of the Brazil locality is that locality really does not produce the same size or clarity as that of the Mozambican locality, right? So the Brazil locality is strong color, but it tends to be much more included, and the size is really limited to, 1 to 3 carats would be kind of your upper end for size ranges. Most of the stuff coming out now, unfortunately, is half a carat or less. And it's just been mined for a longer period of time. It might be the actual size of the deposit. And conversely, in Mozambique, it's a much larger deposit. And it's actually what they call a secondary deposit, right? So it's alluvial. So these Paraíba were in these mountains millions of years ago. The mountains withered down, the stones are carried by river, and then they're layered into a single layered zone, say, about 5 meters under the earth. So the way it's extracted in Brazil is much different than in Mozambique. And we're able to bring a little bit more volume to the market. Again, it's a super rare stone, so everything is all relative. But compared to Brazil, there's a little bit more range, both specifically for size of stone. So in the Mozambique locality, that Paraíba, again, great color, greens, blues, but you can find some bigger sizes, that 1 to 5 carat size. And then in rare occurrences, you can get stones as big as 40, 50 carats with that neon green, neon blue, which is, just unheard of. So I'd say the biggest difference between the two would be the size and the clarity. I'd say Mozambique has the edge. And in terms of an average color saturation, Brazil has a slight edge on that.
Okay, interesting, fantastic. And so I guess I'm curious, when designers are thinking about selecting from this kind of range of stones, these fantastic greens, and I guess like I said, both you and Lorraine, Stephen and Lorraine have worked with both Cuprian and Fuli. So what are you looking for? Is it purely aesthetic? Do you look for like the rarity or lab certifications? What are the qualities that you're looking for when you're picking stones like you did for the collaborations you've worked on?
Lorraine, you start.
He's done it again.
Well, I mean, it could be all the above, definitely always looking for a certification. Sometimes I might have a design in mind, or sometimes I let the stone lead the design. So for peridot, the Fuli peridot, I was looking for a round stone. Actually, rewind. Originally, I saw a pear shape. And then I thought to myself, a pear and a peridot, would that be sellable for me? Let me go with a round, because I had my signature wave bands through the Stack Your Carat series, in which I did in diamonds, but I wanted to, incorporate colored gems. So I said, let me take a design that's sellable, that's beautiful, something that someone would want to wear every day, and let the peridot be the first colored gem in that particular style. So I was looking for just eye clean, something with great balance. And that's pretty much what I'm looking for in general. In terms of the Paraíba, I had a design in mind. I did want something very large, so I was able to find an 8-carat Paraíba in the shamrock green
Mm.
and come up with this particular design called the elevated pear. I wanted to really highlight the beauty of the stone, and in any direction that you move your hand when you're wearing it, you can see the light bounce off of it.
Mhm. Fantastic. And those pieces are what we're seeing on screen, right? Yeah.
Yes, the peridot is the wave band, and
Mhm.
the Paraíba shamrock green is the elevated pear green.
Excellent. All right, Stephen, it's your turn.
Yeah, well, I think from, because I've been in this business for nearly 50 years, I've sort of almost watched the journeys of certainly the two stones we're talking about, because one of them's journey's relatively short with the Fuli. But as far as a Paraíba goes, I've been aware of them since, well, certainly since 1989. I think before, maybe maybe there were some early finds, I don't know. But and of course, you look at it, the first thing you think, if you don't know anything about it, is it's probably fake, because it's such an extraordinary gem color. I'm talking about your classic, I'll say classic, whatever, the Windex blues. And I think I worked with them a bit, not massively, not because I didn't like it, but I just felt the price point was, it is prohibitive unless you've got, a collector that's really focused on a gem without a budget, just saying, this I want in my collection, or my jewelry collection, or whatever it is. So it wasn't something that I worked with in any kind of regularity. But some years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I saw the first, for me, green, and it would have come from Mozambique. We'll call it green Paraíba. It was quite a big stone. It was like 15 carats. It was unbelievable green. And, I put it into a cocktail ring, and it was for one of my best clients. They didn't know that they wanted that. I told them they wanted it, but it fitted in. Yeah, it kind of fitted into the reason why they would come to me. The same as Lorraine, I'm sure, with her clientele, let's call it that, the people who are familiar with your work, and they will accept what you present to them, and saying, look, I'd like you to see this, and that happens a lot, in this world that we're in. You've already got the trust. So that's sort of, I suppose, my first encounter with a green Paraíba, and I think ever since then it's kind of been on my radar, and now there's sort of, I suppose, this opportunity, I'm going to call it that, because I think exactly what Pia was talking about with stones having a champion. I think at Paraíba, if you want to take it out of this very, very narrow sort of opportunity to sell Paraíbas to this generally a wealthy connoisseur of gems, you really start to lose who it is that you potentially can sell it to, and that's generally driven by price point, but price point and education. There's nothing like saying to someone, you show them a stone, you say, how much is this? So it's $2,000. How much is this? 50. They go, what? 50? Because that can easily happen in this world that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to come with an education, right? It's not just the trust of my honest face. But I think, so what we've got now is a chance, I think, with a champion, with behind the mine, producer, and material that's more accessible. We'll end up with something that I think will gain a much broader sort of potential. And I exactly like I was talking about with the peridot, I think Paraíba's potential with a younger consumer is huge. And I think so, because they don't need to be sold on do they like it or not? That's the first thing. You know, it just feels like, wow, that I find that, you know, attractive already. And I think that's the potential as far as the younger consumer goes. And I think also there's a price point here now that feels more accessible. And again, now this will be down to, you know, the supply and the way that designers work with it, because, you know, we need to bring out the best in whatever we're working with. So, you know, if this is not your sort of top example of what a material can be, because that's straight away becomes prohibitive on price, but you're looking at something that, let's say, it's got inclusions, but I'm going to use this in a way that I'm sure you understand. You kind of celebrate that in design. You know, you're not trying to hide it. You're like, look, this material comes included, but look at how beautiful it is. And I think that's all part of the sort of the narrative that you can build around these, certainly the Paraiba stone, and that feels quite exciting. You know, as we know, as all of us here, we're all industry experts. You know, material is not going down in price; it just keeps going up, and this starts. You know, people start falling by the wayside a bit. So, well, you know, I used to be able to buy your things, and now they're this price. It's not just because we put our price up; it's because material keeps getting more expensive. So, I think you're looking for things that are absolutely beautiful. You want to work with. You feel that you're going to have an audience for. And I feel that it falls into that category.
Yeah, thank you. And then so Steve Hannigan, how does the value proposition play out when we're talking about, you know, tourmaline as Paraiba tourmaline, as Stephen was referencing? What are some of the factors that affect value?
Sure. So there's several factors, right? I would say first and foremost would be color, right? The color of Paraiba, blue and green, is kind of signature, right? So your strength and your saturation of color plays a big factor to it. The second I would say would be clarity. Again, this works the same for all gemstones, right? But for Paraiba, it's a type 2. You know, almost all of them will come with some level of inclusions. So when you're holding a Paraiba in your hand that is, you know, near eye clean or even loop clean, you'll see the value grow exponentially because it is such a fraction of the material that comes out in that clarity grade, right? So clarity is definitely a big factor. And I've noticed that plays a little differently between markets. Specifically in the US market, they're very heavy on clarity focus and they'll pay for that quality. And, you know, in Europe, again, just from our experience with sales and our networks, that Europe tends to be dominated by, you know, color first, and they're a little bit more okay with inclusions, or that's just their preferential taste. But again, color and clarity, when you have both of those factors, that's when you'll see, you know, that 1% of total production really just take to the next level price-wise. Third factor would be size. So like I said, the Brazil locality, again, much smaller on average for sizes. Mozambique tends to be a little bit bigger. It's a little bit easier to get that 1, 2, 3, or 4 carat size. When you get bigger than 5 carats, again, that's when you'll see the spike in terms of pricing, just because there's a pretty large drop off in terms of available inventory on the market above 5 carat for sure. So between size, clarity, and color for sure.
Yeah. And does the same thing go for peridot, Pia?
Yeah, it really does, and I think, like Stephen said, it's similarly for all color gemstones. Really, the rarity factor is when you certainly start going over a 5 carat, you know, eye clean gemstone. Both peridot and the Cuprian and Co's, they're both type 2 gemstones, so you will have inclusions, and it's very difficult sometimes when you're speaking to people and they're like, oh, but it's got inclusions, or it's you know, and you're like, well, actually that's the beauty of it. It's Mother Nature that created it. And sometimes you've got to, if I don't see an inclusion in a gemstone, I'm questioning about the gemstone too, you know, only because obviously you don't want it to sort of like affect the stability of a gemstone, but it's nice to have a gemstone. I mean, peridot has lily pads and little things about them, you know, and yeah, definitely when you start going 5 carat and above, the color changes drastically. So obviously when you go down below 0.5 carat in peridot, you do lose the saturation, but that's when like technology and cutting and things like that come into play. And when you really are sort of homing in on the skill set of the cutters you're working with, because just by changing the fraction of the height of the gemstone, you can make an intenser green. So understanding your material, knowing what you're mining and what you're bringing out and what the scalability is, and yeah, I mean the rarity factor. So our peridot mine is the largest known, but it still has a finite supply of certain sizes, of certain color. And if you compare it to, say, the Arizona peridot that's been on the market for a long time, ours is a cleaner, than the Arizona, and we do offer larger sizes compared to what's available in the China mine and the Arizona mine, the US mine. Scale size, we're bigger. Yeah, we can offer different things. So
yeah. Well, and another thing I would love to talk about is, there's been a lot of conversation, obviously, in the last few decades about traceability and the practices that go along with extracting materials, gems or others. And I think in the jewelry world, it's still, I think a lot of that conversation is dominated by what's happening with diamonds. But I wonder, and especially with respect to colored gemstones, what has been your experience? And this, I guess, we'll start with maybe the designers. Stephen, you're going first this time.
Yes, absolutely. What would you like me to?
What? I guess I'm curious. Like how? I mean, obviously, there's the Kimberley process in the diamonds, in the diamond world. So, in the colored world, how easy or difficult have you found it to follow mine to market generally?
Yeah, well, I could say, of course, it's extremely difficult. I mean, we've got now 2 bodies here that are very much about traceability, offering, a complete transparency, from the mine to certainly the designer, which then can pass it on to the consumer, which helps massively. But, I guess historically, much more of a challenge, because you're not looking at, like you just said about, diamonds has spent a lot of time and effort trying to, be able to show some of that transparency in the processes that take place. But I think, we're talking about color, tends to be smaller scale. It could come from anywhere, even listening to Pia from sort of, we're talking about Arizona to China. So, as a designer, I think I've been fairly sort of active in pursuing the origins and even visiting some of the mines, which I enjoy immensely, but I don't have the time to go to all of them. So you've got to build a trust, and I know that sounds like, yeah, okay, what does that mean? But you know what, you have to do it. It counts for so much about who you're buying your gems from, and then more recently, I think we make everybody, apply to our sort of code, if you like, of conduct. In order for us to want to work with someone, they've got to be able to provide evidence that, these things are what they say they are. And when I say that, I mean, that the mines are, mined in a way that we would say fit in with our idea of what that should be. And I'm using these kind of terminology because, mining is a tough business. It's not for everybody, that's for sure. So even being in a mine is not something that you might say is a bit like just going to the office. But we also know that there's conditions and things that you'd say, okay, this is acceptable. You're a miner, you go to work every day, you feel safe, you come home, etc. I know that was quite simplistic, but I think you kind of get where I'm going. And I think there's so much of that has had to take place. And I think now people are more, when I go to Tucson, for example, and I know, you know, everybody here goes to Tucson, you know, the stories that you hear are the stories that people want to tell you about their mining story, their journeys. And of course, that didn't happen certainly 10 years ago. I mean, maybe in the last, you know, up to that, to today, you'll encounter more positive stories surrounding the way a gem has come to be at a show like Tucson. And I think that's kind of the way I would look at it. I've so many of the people I've worked with for maybe 30 years, maybe more. But if something new comes to the market, I want to feel that the reason I'm not going to work with it is because I can't, it's too opaque. You know, that would be terrible. But, you know, we're not talking about that in this case. You know, there's anything but, you know, and I've been invited to both these mines, and I will get there. I think COVID spoiled me going to Fuli Gems, but I'm going to get, because then I feel my, you know, then I can really tell the story. And when I went to the Tanzanite mines the first time, my God, I came back, I was sort of euphoric about this place I'd been and what I'd seen, and then the stones that I had then in front of me. And it really works. It works, you know, at a basic level. It's an amazing selling tool as a designer to be able to say I've actually in some ways been part of this journey. I've seen it with my own eyes, and so we're looking for more of those stories, not always to visit the mine, but that you can trust the people that you're working with.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you're talking from the heart when you've been to it. But you are, aren't you? Because it's you've got the confidence to talk about it as well, because you've seen it and you've been there. You know, that's or you know the people involved, and I think that's fundamentally important. You know.
Yeah. Fundamentally, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Absolutely. And like Lorraine, for instance, please, you know, share your feelings about this as well. I don't know if you've been to any of the mines, or you know, even have clients that are asking you about the origins of your colored gems versus diamonds. What's your experience in that?
Well, I agree with a lot of things that Stephen said. I've been to a diamond mine. I haven't been to a colored gem mine, so I am looking forward to that. But even for the first time going to an actual mine, it does, you know, it transforms you. You know, it feels like you're bona fide, like you're stamped, like you're a true designer on a whole nother level to, you know, witness large scale mining or artisanal mining done at its absolute best, you know, that's going to be sustainable for, you know, the community where the mining is happening down to the workers. I mean, why wouldn't that be an amazing part of your storytelling when you're presenting the work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think, let me see. Earlier, somebody said, who said that something looks fake if they question how? Okay, so Stephen said that. So this is how I feel about you know, luxury materials or precious materials, whether it be gemstones or metals, right? But we're talking about gemstones, and we're talking about colored gemstones. When you think about a colored gemstone, a child, maybe the first thing they would think of is maybe a toy ring, right? Because it's really bright and, you know, it's big. And for us and the way we work, it's our principles and our standards when no one's looking, right? That's why we do what we do. So for me, I've worked with just a handful of color gem vendors or distributors, dealers that have that same passion to know where the source comes from. So, which means that I may see something out in the world where it looks beautiful and it says it's what it is, but if they don't know where it comes from, I don't want to invest in that. You know, I'd rather invest in something where I can trace it to the best of my ability, or that dealer can trace it to the best of their ability. So being able to participate in a designer collab with both these mining companies has been a blessing for me, because I never thought that that would happen, right? To be, you know, um, I guess on the younger side, right? Even though I have some age on me too, but I've been in the business
I
27
can
years now.
tell.
Yeah, I'm like a baby, like still 27 years compared to the master Stephen. But yeah, it's important to us, and maybe the fact that it's so important to us can rub off on the consumer that may not think about that.
Thank you. You know, Stephen Hennigan, I will. I'm curious because I know that you know your focus at Cuprian and Co. is really a lot on the process and really, you know, supporting the local communities you work with, like Mavuco and Mozambique. Can you just kind of give us a snapshot? I mean, most people who are watching this or listening to this have not been to a mining operation before. So how is what you do different? And can you just explain a little bit about kind of the ethos behind what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So, you know, I think both Lorraine and Stephen hit the nail on the head in that at the end of the day, it comes back to relationships with your suppliers. And as a mining company, it's our relationships with our employees, with the local community, et cetera. That's really the key to our success. Our mining company over in Mavuco currently employs about 120 employees, and approximately 95% of them are actually from the local Nampula province, right? Most of them are actually from Mavuco itself in the area. And since we've been around since 2006, I mean, we've got employees that have been with us now for the better half of 15, 20 years, so much to the point that actually I know at least 2 or 3 of them that the father, their son, is now part of the company too. Our mechanic has been with us for like 15 years. His son now has been with us for at least 3 or 4. And so again, relationships with the community and building the trust and taking care of your employees. Again, it's all relative in size. So 120 employee size company sounds big, but relative to a De Beers or some of these really large scale companies, it's still small. It's still intimate. You still know your employees by name, you know, between the geologist or the purchasing team or security or the selection team. You know the families that are affected and benefit from working with the company, because Mavuco, just talking about our mine specifically, it is remote. I mean, it is like a 3.5 hour drive, maybe a little bit more, off-road, pretty deep into the rural areas. And so, when you work with this community, there's no electricity there, right? It is generator run. We donate some of our electricity to the local school, the police station, hospital, etc. You have to take care of this community, and starting with just even the basics. So we've donated a series of water wells in some of the surrounding areas where it's a little bit harder to get access to water. We just finished, actually only a few weeks ago, donating another 2 classrooms to the local school area in Mavuco. And it's community projects like this that keep the relations tight in terms of, building that trust, whether it's the government leaders or local leaders or employees, making sure you've got proper protective equipment, things like that. That is a key difference, because when it's not a professional company and we're talking about these single one-off artisanal miners, it's hard to maintain for single group of 2-3 artisanal miners that go out on their own. There's certain safety things that you have to take into account, and there's a minimum threshold basically that you need to establish to do things the right way. So we like to put that at the forefront basically, in terms of our ethos and approach to working with the community. And that translates through when you're working with folks like Stephen Webster, Lorraine, as a supplier, when you're as a when you're a designer talking to your supplier, this kind of info should fall off their lips, right? If they're the real deal and they're in the day-to-day of a mining operation, this is the kind of stuff they should just be talking about. They should know their employees, the day-to-day operations. I mean, that's how I spend most of my mornings, from 4 a.m. till 9, 10 a.m. waking up my wife to be on Mozambique time. You got to be talking with these folks and understanding what's happening on the ground. And, I think that's been key to our success so far.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
And what about environmental impact? I mean, are there things that you are doing to actively minimize impacts? I mean, you mentioned the alluvial format of the mining. Can you describe what happens in that sense? Because I think that is a big, area of concern for a lot of clients. They want to know about what happens after to the landscape that these stones are coming from.
100%. So when you start any mining project, you'll have to do something what's called like an environmental impact study, right? So they'll bring in biologists and sociologists and understand who's affected in the community, what's the local fauna and flora that will be affected based on the mining operations you plan on doing. So we're blessed, thankfully, that this is an alluvial deposit. Like I said, the productive material we're looking for is about 4 or 5 meters under the Earth's soil, right? So the basic explanation of how you take it out is you remove the topsoil, you set that aside, then you take out the thin layer of productive ore, and that gets transported over to the wash plant. After it gets extracted, it's a very simple process of taking that topsoil, replacing it back into the excavated area, and then replanting it with both some of the local flora, and then we also will do other kind of crops like bananas, sesame seeds, cashew nuts, which is actually a pretty big staple over in Mozambique. So there's a whole reclamation project so that any area that you excavate, it's your responsibility to return it to its previous state. And that's kind of something that we kind of do a very formal plan to kind of set that out with the mine plan.
Okay. And I know, Pia, are you, I think the nature of the mining is a bit different, but I know that you also have a really, important environmental plan, and the byproducts are interesting.
Yeah, so it's very similar. I mean, I've been fortunate to have worked for other mining companies. So I've been in Mozambique, and I know what Stephen's got, going through and working with the communities, and same with Zambia. But obviously China's different, but they still have the same set of international standards that you can't just go and get a mining license. You've got to have an environmental impact, strategy and everything. And also what's going to happen after the mine's finished, what happens to the people. So in China, for example, with the license, where we're right up in the remote area in northeast province of China. You can get it a lot easier than some of the mines in Africa, but the actual environment, there's 101 species of rare trees. You're not allowed to touch any of that. That's all protected like forestry, land, etc. And also, in order for the mine to have been developed, we had to vote with the local people. So we had to say, okay, this is our plan. And unless the local people agreed to a mine going there, you weren't going to get a mining license. And obviously the people wanted it because it's going to create jobs. It's creating jobs around there. And they also know about the other materials, which I'll explain about. But you've got to think about your social impact, positive social impact, if you're going to go and start mining somewhere. Can you build schools? Can you bring jobs? What are you bringing that's going to be a benefit, not the right word, but to be a benefit for the people around there. So all of those things come into play. And like I said, like after you finish with the mine, what are you doing with it? What's your plan to reinstate the land, etc.? So this mine in China is very different than a big open cast or taking away the soil and putting the soil back after. It's not alluvial, it's primary. So we're going in the side of Changbai Mountains. We're not going down, we're going in the side. And our mining area, compared to some mines in Africa are like 40 square kilometer license area. Ours is literally 4 square kilometers. It's tiny in comparison. And we're literally going in the side with a 4x4 tunnel into it. And literally you go in 1 or 2 meters and you're in a peridot tunnel. It's insane. But what's really interesting, I've got a little prop here, this is the ore material. So this is the basalt, this black, which you can see on screen, they're showing you now. And this is the sand. So these are like byproducts of the mine. both of these materials are carbon sequesters, which is a phenomenal thing. And they're on every continent of the planet. They're one of the most inexpensive ways to decarbonize. So if you take the sand, which is shown in the middle, if you take 1 kilogram of sand, crush it, put it on the land, let the rain land on it, it absorbs its body weight. So 1 kilogram of that olivine sand will take 1 kilo of carbon dioxide out the atmosphere. It's an amazing thing. It's not our baby because we're a mining company, but we will be working with, the local companies inside China to actually use that material and put it to good use. Then the basalt, another really amazing thing. And I also always wonder, why is it so green around that mine, around that area? It's so green, amazing trees, amazing landscape. Is because this volcanic basalt is really mineral rich and full of nutrients. And again, if you crush it a little bit and you put it on land, you can make the crops stronger. So you can take this material. So the local government is going to be using this material to improve the farming of crops, etc., around all those local farmers that are around there. So everything is a benefit. So we bring out these beautiful gemstones, but we also bring out this byproduct that everything can be used. Basalt, you can melt basalt into a fiber. You can make it into artificial limbs. You can use the olivine as a natural silicate, as an abrasive to clean buildings, all sorts of things. You can even crush this and put it into the building, the structure of a building, and it helps make the building carbon neutral. So obviously we're still moving materials. So don't get me wrong, we're still mining. So I'm not saying, we're squeaky clean at all. But what I'm saying is that you can do it in a less impactful way on the planet and the people by actually making it better for people, by working with them and seeing what you've got in your hands. Not all mines can do that because it's just a different nature of a deposit. But this one in particular is fascinating, really fascinating.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Yeah. I would like some volcanic basalt for my garden, please. Just a little bag.
You can get it. You can get it. That's so great. Not far from where I live, there's that basalt and things here. So it's amazing. There's lots of research going on inside China, in North America, of how these materials can be put to better use. Rather than trying to get some fandangle machine that's going to take the carbon out, the poison out of the atmosphere. This is a Mother Nature's answer to it. So. Yeah.
So are those things like the olivine and the basalt as part of what makes Fuli the first zero waste colored gem mine?
We're not yet. We're not yet zero. We're aiming for that. We want to aim for it. Yeah. I mean,
okay. That's your objective.
Yeah. Okay. That's our objectives, is to be like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So and so what does that entail?
I mean, everything you're bringing out, you're measuring, you're weighing it, you're working with environmental companies that can put that material to good use. And when you're doing that, obviously we're still going to we will put some of the ore back into the tunnel once it's finished with, but our mine is only like a kilometer in. And that's as far as we're going to go into the mine, because there's enough material in there in that concentrated area that we don't have to disturb anything else. So working with the right companies, working with partnerships, working with charities, etc., is the most important thing. There's really amazing things going on there in the Changbai Mountains. The Siberian tiger has returned. That's a phenomenal thing that Green China have done. And the decarbonization is the most important thing. It's taking away the nastiness that we've put there before. Not us, but everyone has,
the world.
So, yeah. Paying attention to people and the planet, I think that's the most important thing. So
right. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I'm just curious, because I'm sure that people, we have a number of designers and everyone else who are going to be watching this. What do you look for in the designers that you're working with? If someone wanted to collaborate with you, are they going to be more forthcoming? I'm sure people are going to be knocking down your door to try and get some of these materials.
Well, Stephen, do you want to answer that? Stephen, not Stephen Webster, Stephen Cuprian.
Sure. No problem. For us, the ideal designer is one that aligns with our ethics and our ethos in terms of sustainability and transparency. And obviously Stephen Webster and Lorraine are the ideal candidates. That they not only do they match our ethics, but they also appreciate Paraiba for what a true miracle that it is. That this natural anomaly and this glow for the stone, it's the type of designer that wants to be educated and really learn more and transmit that information to their end customers to help build the awareness. For us, that's who we love working with. Both of these guys have been an absolute pleasure to collaborate with, super communicative with our team. And in order to do these kind of collabs, it takes a village. So it's much appreciated on our side.
Can I just add, I think it's also being different. I think taking risks and not just going for the classic ruby, emerald, sapphire type thing, and thinking outside the box, and which I hate that expression, but just really pushing the boundaries of what can be achieved when you take these amazing creative minds and put it in front of an incredible gemstone, the tourmaline or the peridot. I think that really plays into, or on top of all the other heartfelt things, about the materials and where they've come from.
Excellent. And when is the world going to be able to get their hands on these pieces that Stephen and Lorraine created? Are they in the pipeline? Where are they? When are we going to get them?
Well, ours are out there. Ours are out there. With Lorraine's pieces are with the jewelry edit, and Stephen Stephen's already sold that amazing necklace, which is
that was an amazing thing, because Pia and I loved it. But you need someone else to love it, because it was a real statement peridot piece. And I'm sure Pia, like myself, was delighted that it found a home in its magnificence, because every single gem had to be cut, of which there were many. So I think, in some ways it shows that if you can combine something that's naturally amazing, with a design that people find, a connection to, then that's how these lesser known, we'll just call it that, gemstones find a place out there in that sort of world that so much of it belongs to more classic materials, because that was a very expensive necklace, and and I'm delighted that we made it, worked with it, because we both used it ourselves, for our purpose, and then we sold it. So it's a nice story. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm sure that everyone has learned a lot more that they didn't know about both Paraiba tourmaline and peridot, because I know I certainly did, and I've been at this for a while. So thanks again, and I hope everyone also tunes into all the other great content that's coming from New York City Jewelry Week this year. Thank you all so very much.